All right, that thumbnail is from a couple years ago, but I thought I would post this video to bring up a point that job sites can be dangerous, even just around your house.
The last thing I said when he was going up the ladder was watch out for that hole.
This happened in somebody's home. I'm gonna tell you how it happened right after this. Okay, you can see by these pictures that I got a pretty nasty black eye. It's the worst one I've ever had. Actually, I've only had one or two in my life, and that one was pretty bad. So luckily, I've never been punched, but it looks like it. But I'll tell you what punched me, and it's a job site thing. Now I'm out here in my shop. You might see I'm kind of working on my generator for my RV. I'm doing a bunch of work on the carburetor, adjusting the valves, and a bunch of little maintenance things that needed to be done. And I thought I'd tell you this story. I was working on a job site of my own, removing popcorn ceiling and a ton of wallpaper all through this house. So we were repainting the whole house. The homeowners were going to be out of town for like 2 weeks, I think it was. And so we contracted to come in during that time, and we had to set up scaffolding because it had like a 20-foot high ceiling in the living room. And I had a bunch of people working for me. Well, I was doing some painting in the laundry room. And basically, this is how it kind of went, you know, typical laundry room. Imagine that right in front of me is the washer and dryer. Right there on my left is a cabinet, one cabinet. Well, I just needed to get beside this dryer or washer, I can't remember which it was, and just do a little bit of work, and I squeezed in there. And when I came back out, I was leaned over, and then when I went to stand up, my head hit the corner of the cabinet, and it was a very square cabinet, very sharp corner. And I raised up fairly quickly, forgetting the cabinet was there. And that immediately put me from this bent over position. I hit my head. My reflexes just kicked in and threw my head forward. There was a washing machine corner right there, and my head just slammed in. The difference was only about 14 inches between the two. So I kind of didn't have time to react and think about it. It was just pure a reaction. I had no control. I slammed into it hard, and you can see it just almost instantly shut my eye and turned it really black. And I came out, and luckily my wife was there because I was going to have a hard time driving, and she kind of freaked out. She thought I'd practically been killed because it did look pretty bad. So the point of this video is kind of to make you guys aware that even when you're doing simple stuff like painting, it can get pretty dangerous. Now, some of you might say, from some of you OSHA guys that have worked on a lot of that stuff, maybe I should have been wearing a helmet. I never wear a helmet, not on a painting job especially. I wear it for drywall, a few different things. And on commercial jobs, I've wore a helmet. I think my helmet, there's some of them right up there on the shelf, as a matter of fact. I have wore helmets, but I'm not going to wear one when I'm painting. I shouldn't need it. That was just a simple, dumb mistake on my part, not being aware. So you want to always be aware of the hazards when you're working. And, you know, I've had a few other close calls. I've ripped off fingernails before. I've fallen off ladders. Another story is I was working on a job where I had to set my ladder up in the stairway, and I have these little giant ladders. So I have a bunch of them. I have 3 or 4 of them. If you guys don't know what a little giant ladder is, I'm sure a lot of you do. You can probably see right here is a regular type A-frame fiberglass ladder. And then back here in the corner, See, I've got step stool type ladders. Back in the corner is an extension ladder. More fiberglass ladders, but back there is little giant ladders. And I have about 3 of them. There's 1, 2, 3 for different heights. And those ladders are great in stairways because you can set one leg shorter than the other. So I was on my tall one and I was sanding that day. And I went up my ladder, and you can go up one side of those little giant ladders and just swing over and come down the other because they're made that way. They got steps on both sides. They are rock solid. They're normally really safe, but because I was sanding, when I stepped over the other side and went to come down, my foot slipped because drywall dust is kind of like talcum powder, and it can act like a lubricant on things like metal. And my foot slid out from under me. I had the ladder behind me at that point, and I literally bounced on my hip down about 6 rungs, hitting every rung on the way down, and it hurt bad, and it tore my back up. I couldn't take a breath for like a minute and a half, or something like a minute. It seemed like forever. I had somebody working there with me, and they come running over trying to get me to talk. I couldn't talk for like a minute because I just couldn't take a breath. It hurt bad. Well, I was back to work in about 15 minutes because that's the way I do things. But on that same job, I had another incident, and I don't usually have this many incidents, but I did that time. So that time, the next time, I was using my extended plank. Now, if you guys haven't seen an extended plank, that's also back here in this corner. If you look back here, hopefully it's not too dark, this thing back in here, it's a plank that you can extend out. And I had it, actually I take that back. I was working on a scaffolding, a baker type scaffold on that point, and I was trying to lower one of the platforms by myself because I didn't have a helper right then. And I went to lower it, something slipped, and basically I almost lost control of it. It started heading towards a big fancy stained glass door. So I reached out and grabbed it, and it smashed my finger, ripped my fingernail off. So those kind of things can happen to you guys. And that one was my fault too. I basically wasn't paying enough attention. I should have had help. But point is, even if you're working on your own home, things can happen. I've seen guys fall off ladders and get hurt really bad. I've never been hurt really bad since I was a kid. I guess I did get hurt really bad one time. This was dumb too. Here's another dumb story where you learn about safety. We were working on a commercial building. So it had a maintenance bay on the bottom floor and offices on the top. So usually that means at least a 14-foot ceiling. And therefore, the offices, the floor of the offices are going to be at least about 14 foot high. I was hanging some rock on the end of the stairwell where you walk all the way out to the end, and it was only about 4 foot wide, so I was hanging it by myself. And we had put like 2x10s from this floor over here to this floor spanning across there, and you could just step out, walk across. Now this is in like in 1980, so this is way back in the early part of my career. I was only about 19. And I was walking out across there, and I got near the end, and I'm like 14 feet up in the air. I stepped on the next board. It was like I stepped into thin air. Somebody hadn't fastened that board down. And so it was just hanging on the edge, and I didn't see that, and it just slid out from under my foot, and down I went. 14 feet in a stairway, landed on the stairs, and of course my instinct was to put my hand out to catch myself, and that just tweaked the heck out of my wrist, possibly broke it, possibly fractured my hip. I don't know, because I never went to the hospital. Back then, I gotta admit, my dad didn't carry workman's comp on us. So I crawled, it took me about 30 minutes to crawl over to the pile of sheetrock that wasn't too far away, and I laid there until somebody found me.
You found me!
And they took me home, and I couldn't work for 2 weeks. I couldn't hardly move for 2 weeks. But like I said, I didn't go to the doctor. Who knows what that did to me? But it did teach me a lesson. Don't do dumb stuff. Don't take chances like that. Another quick instance, I worked with a guy one time, and we were working on the 3rd floor of an elevator shaft, and you sometimes have to go in there and hang core board and really thick sheetrock and do things like that. And that was our job. It was about 3 stories up, and he goes, well, let's scaffold out over to that wall over there and start hanging it. And he lays out 2 2x6s and just spans across there and starts rolling a baker scaffold out on it. And I'm like, dude, no, I am not getting on that scaffold, and you shouldn't either. He's like, oh, come on, it'll be all right. We'll lock the wheels. I'm like, no, you don't do stuff like that, guys. There's guys that will try and do that. Don't let them sucker you into it. It wasn't an OSHA job. No one was monitoring anything. So I used my own common sense and said, no, I just won't do it. And we ended up moving on to something else. And I think someone else did it. But you should put plenty of lumber across there, put solid decking on there, some 3/4 inch plywood or something to make it much stronger and safer. Don't trust that board. Besides, that board might crack and break. On top of that, we could have rolled off of it. There's a few stories from the crypt, if you will.
Straight from the crypt.
From the vault of that Kilted guy. Some of the stories I could tell you. I'll tell you more another time, but I thought I'd just share that one with you and tell you, be safe, everybody. Don't do dumb shit. I'll see you on the next video. Take care.